Welcome back to another episode here on Coach's Corner. I am Paulie Barra, the founder of Identity of One Coaching, and I specialize in helping men and women like yourself break free from your past and identify your true identity, which will uncover your gifts and talents that are on purpose for your life of freedom. As you dive into this podcast, grab a pen and pad, your favorite flavored coffee, or whatever you may be into this very moment, and get ready for tips and nuggets to help set you free. If there is anything on any one of these episodes that has brought value to your life, do me a huge favor, my friend, and drop me a review down below here on Apple Podcast. You can also follow me on Spotify and iHeartRadio, and we're also on Audible and Pandora and all of your favorite podcast apps. So, with that being said, let's dive in. Alrighty, and welcome back to another episode here on Coach's Corner. I am your host, Coach Paulie Barra, and I'm so blessed and so thankful for you tuning in, whether you're here on YouTube or if you are on Apple, Spotify, iHeart, and all of your favorite podcast platforms. Thank you so much for subscribing and also sharing this out. And so today I've got a very special guest, Natalie Hixson from nataliehixson.com. She is a wife, a mother, an auntie, and a certified life coach, and she specializes in helping discouraged Christian moms overcome destructive anger and burnout. Now, I'm not a mom, but trust me, I know what it's like to have that burnout and to live that life of anger. And once you're free from that, it is such an awesome feeling. And so, as you know, anyone that I interview, or if you've ever gone through something and able to teach it, it's because you've been able to overcome that and also be set free from that. So she is a mom out of Bozeman, Montana, with her husband and 3 wonderful daughters. And she recharges daily. And this is what I love. She recharges daily, not only with Jesus, but she's got to have her coffee and her family adventures. So with that being said, I welcome Natalie Hixson to our show. So Natalie, let us know how you're doing, and let's dive into this conversation of how to overcome these destructive behaviors.
Yeah, I'm great. Thanks for having me on. And yeah, you got that right. I love my coffee and more so love my Jesus. So yeah, it's awesome. Yes. So the Lord has brought me through an incredible journey. And back in the day when my kids were little and I was abusive in my anger and rage, never would I have thought that this is what I would be coaching on. But isn't that like how it goes, right?
Right.
The Lord
Absolutely.
equips us through this university of life. and and I just love too that when we spend that daily time with him, he does equip us and he does bring us to something that's bigger than ourselves because it's him.
So let me just ask this. So
Yeah.
you were saying something about your younger years, right?
Yeah.
Of just the anger, the destructive behaviors, and all of those things. When did you recognize I've got a problem? Like
Yeah.
when was that red flag that came up in your spirit?
It came up the first year I was married. So my husband and I are high school sweethearts. And the first like few months that we moved in together after we got married, that's when I really started to notice something was different. You would think I would know this in high school because we certainly had our challenges in high school, but it wasn't until we actually had to live together that it really brought out this, wow, there's something's not normal here. And if I go back a little bit, I grew up in a family with reactive parents. My parents were loud, they were reactive, they were destructive with their anger. Today, they have grown, they are close to the Lord, and they're incredible. But yes, back when I was a kid, that's what I was watching was when you're angry, you yell, you slam doors, you throw things, you stomp your foot. And that's what I grew up with. So when I took that into my marriage, I married a guy who was completely opposite. His family did not yell. They were very quiet. They were probably some passive aggressiveness and they avoided conflict. So when you put the two of us together in the same house, here I am screaming at him and he's just sitting there. And I can even remember being like, why aren't you yelling back at me? It would just be so
Right.
much easier. And he's just like, that's not what I do. So
Wow.
it was at that place. Yeah. And I started to recognize that I was really angry and I didn't know what to do about it or that I could do anything about it. I recall having a conversation with my mother-in-law over the phone one time saying, I'm afraid to have kids because I get so angry. I don't even know what to do about that. And I think she prayed with me and it was really cool, but it's still, I had this fear, like, what would I do if I had kids?
Mm.
That of course did not stop us. Fast forward a few years and we brought our first daughter, Enya, home, who is 18 now. But
Wow.
yeah, she about the age of 2, you could find me and her both on the floor screaming, throwing tantrums. I'd be screaming at her, she's screaming at me. We're both crying, frustrated. I, of course, was the scarier one because I'm the adult throwing a tantrum and I'm abusing her at this point. I'm screaming, belittling, I'm leaving handprints on her butt, little bruises on her arm from squeezing too hard, and feeling afraid of what am I doing? Like living in this terrible cycle of getting angry at her, using destructive behavior on her, and then this guilt that would follow, and just wanting desperately to love my child, but not knowing how to actually live with her in a healthy way.
Mm.
And when my husband would try to step in, if he was home during those moments, I would just get even more angry. And so he would do what he could to protect Enya, but I just was just full of this rage.
Wow.
And then again, we had another kiddo a couple years later. And I just remember being in her nursery, nursing her one night, and Mike was putting Enya to bed. And at this point, Enya's throwing epic tantrums because, of course, we don't know how to help her work through this because mom's still throwing epic tantrums. But I'm putting it on her. And I'm thinking, if she would just listen, I wouldn't get so upset. And this would be so much easier. And we could have so much more fun as a family if she would just get herself together. Right. So I'm like putting it all on her. But this night, this occasion, I'm getting more and more angry. And I'm in a room with the door shut. Enya's down the hall with Mike. And I just let out this huge scream for Enya to just shut up. And of course, Enya didn't hear me. But Sky, she stops nursing and she looks at me, and this little infant face, just horrific, starts crying. And I'm just like, something has got to give. We've got to stop this. So I came up with this idea of, hey, we should take Enya to therapy and help Enya. So there we go.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. So we did. We took her to a therapist and she observed her, and then she talked to Mike and I without Enya there. And she's like, Enya's a perfectly normal child for her age and development. And I'm like, that's great. So what do we do? You're not home. You aren't seeing her behavior. She's like, I understand that there's challenges at home, and Natalie, you're the one who needs to come in to see me. And I was just like, wait, what?
Right. Wow.
But deep down inside, I was so grateful that somebody was telling me that there was hope for me and I could change, that there was not, because I think up until this point, really, I had thought there wasn't a way for me to change because I tried all the time. Like, I'm not going to yell tomorrow. I'm not going to yell tomorrow. And the next day I'd yell. So it was just this never ending cycle of failure and never seen any relief. So I just really had it in me that if we could change Enya, then maybe things would get better, and not recognizing the fact that I was the one who really could change. And I'll tell you, I went through 4 years of psychoanalysis. It wasn't Christian therapy. It was just psychoanalysis therapy. It did a lot for me. I understood a lot more about my background and history and all kinds of things. But I still left therapy yelling at my kids. And so I would say at that point, the destructive behavior was getting less and less for sure, but I still had these patterns that I didn't appreciate. And I knew were hurting my kids and my relationship with them. And it was from that place that kind of really got the ball rolling in personal development. And then the Lord really took me and led me down a path with Him that through different business failures and just life failures in general, like trying, calling out to the Lord, why, I don't understand. Why aren't these things working? Why did you give me these kids if I can't love them the way that you want me to love them? But I continually ask the question, why? And I get people saying that, like, questioning the Lord. I'm like, question the Lord. He can handle this. Don't go to
Mhm.
somebody else, go to him,
Right.
and it feels funny asking the Lord, yeah, sometimes, or being upset that this is what's going on in your life, but he's the one who can handle it. And as long as you're continually coming back to him, he will prove himself to be true to you and be faithful. And not that he has to prove that to us, but your eyes will be opened.
Absolutely.
So, um, fast forward a little bit, I ended up in Christian life coaching school, and in that space, we were highly encouraged. Hey, if you're going to be coaching Christians, you need to be walking with the Lord,
Mm.
and on a consistent basis, spending time with the Lord. And so I really got my habit in that place of spending daily time with the Lord, and
Right.
that's where the real work started to happen in my life, because at that point I'm able to recognize his voice because I'm learning his voice. I'm hearing him. I'm spending that time with him. And so he led me through that into a friend asked me to come on her podcast and talk about anger because we just had a moment where we had talked all night about it. And she's like, girl, you need to get on here and talk to mom, my audience, about anger and working through that. And the rest is
Wow.
kind of history. After that point, moms were calling, what do I do? How do I work through this?
Wow, that is so awesome. So how old were your girls when this transformation took place?
um, as far as which part of the transformation?
As far as going through the life coaching and then realizing, okay, I have to spend time with the Lord. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Yep. Let's see. That was back in, I'm looking at my certificate. So 2016 is when I finished school. Um, and I'm trying to think. 2016, my oldest is 18 now, and we got 14 and 11. So they were
Wow.
younger, a little bit,
Wow.
you know, just
Yeah.
coming into their younger or mid-teen or teen years.
Yes. Yes. No,
um,
I'm asking because it's so funny because your story is
mhm,
pretty much like my story. I thought I
okay.
was delivered from anger just because we give our heart to Jesus and everything's just, fine and dandy. So my wife is the very passive, quiet. My stepson, he's, they're just they're very quiet. They're not expressive like I am. That's what I like to call it, expressive.
Yes.
And so even being a pastor, leader in ministry, all of that, there was this one point in time where me and my son got in this heated situation, and that's where this anger came out of me that I had never seen before.
Mm,
Everything that I said I wouldn't be, in that 30 seconds I became. And I'm like, what just happened? And I was teaching 12 step, I was teaching recovery, restoration, all of that. I knew exactly what to do. So kind of like when you had the analysis, you knew, okay, here's pinpoints, here's triggers, here's how you resolve it, here's this, here's that. But then when it's in your face, it's like, oh my gosh. And so I literally went through this 12-step program. And the second time there, I was sitting there going, why am I here? And I literally heard the Lord say, because I want you to see that you don't even belong here. You know exactly what you need to do. And at that
mm,
point is when my whole trajectory changed. And even through that, my wife and my son were still kind of like on eggshells. And I finally just had that moment and I said, listen, I'm not going to prove this to you for the rest of my life. I'm making this change. I know that I'm making it. And I don't want to tell you that I'm making it. I'm going to show you. And from that moment forward until now, it's still that daily process. People ask me, how did you get free from it? I said, I'm not free from it. I'm free to understand it now. I
mhm.
understand where I'm coming from. I understand where those triggers come from: stepfather, childhood, abuse, all of those things.
Yeah.
And so that's why I was just wondering about what age they were at, and then just them seeing the transformation.
Yeah.
Like how did they cope with that, knowing, you know, one day mom's this and then now she's this. How did they go through that transition?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. Okay, so it was very gradual for me. And um, I would definitely say that my youngest, we actually chuckled about this, I don't know, probably a couple of years ago. My oldest and I, Enya, we were laughing because Shay, my youngest, looks at me and she's like, "You're being so mean and scary," because I was like being stern and like raising my voice a bit to her, and
Right.
Enya and I look at each other and she's like, "Shay, you got no idea what mom's mean can be." And so,
I love
which
it.
was true, because through my growth, it got less and less as far as my destructive behavior and what I was doing. And I want to talk about that in a few minutes, about what's that difference between destructive behavior and regular anger or normal mom anger,
Right.
whatever.
I love it.
But yeah, it was a gradual process for me. And the Sky and Shay, my younger two, they don't remember it as much as Enya would have. But here's the blessing in that: Enya doesn't even remember. Like, she remembers a little bit, but she does not remember. When I tell her the abuse that I had with her, that I gave her, she's like, "I don't remember that, Mom." And I don't know if that's either muscle, like memory repression, or it's the Lord just totally blocking that and not she doesn't need to do that through restoration.
Wow.
And I've told her, "Hey, kiddo, here's the thing: as you grow, stuff might come up for you,
Mm-hmm.
and it may not be until if you have children someday, it may not be till you have children that something starts to trigger you. And at any point in your life, you start to think of something that maybe mom needs to talk to you about, or you have a memory or anything like that. Come to me. I want to make that right with you, because I was abusive and it was wrong. And I want to make sure that we are restored in that. And I'm trusting the Lord to walk with
Mm.
us in that relationship." And I'll tell you, today our relationship is very beautiful. It's, she's 18, she's teenager. There's still things there, and it's not perfect, but it's not at all what you would expect it to be from the abuse she received when she was 2, 3, 4, 5 years old.
Wow.
But the other thing too is they watched um, they've watched me progress, and I am definitely not perfect. I even when I talk to people and they're asking, if we should be coaching, we're kind of on that initial call. I'm like,
Right.
here's the deal: I don't come on here, or I don't help you get rid of your anger. My goal is to help you recognize that you are not an angry, terrible mom, but that you are a mom who gets angry. And there are times that we do make mistakes. And here's how we're going to work through that, and hope that you get to a point where you're not so triggered into rage and destructive behavior all the time. There might be moments that it comes back, because we'll walk, overwhelm, things happen, you know. We had my parents living with us for 3 months one summer while their kitchen got flooded and they had to redo their entire kitchen. And I remember one night, and this was just like 3 years ago, I remember I'm coaching moms through anger, right? And anyways, something happened and I just totally lost it. I just went, I didn't hit anybody, but I was just screaming. I was like totally checked out. And I'm like, whoa, what just happened? Right? Kind of
Yeah.
like that moment that you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of those moments too, so humbling. You're just like, "Lord, I'm a failure and I'm a phony. How can I help moms work through this stuff?" But here I go, just totally lost it, right?
Come on.
And I, yeah, literally on my knees: "Lord, keeping me humble." But I went back in when I recovered with the girls and I said, "Girls, I am so sorry. I did not, like, I don't even know why that I allowed that to happen. Forgive me, please," and did my recovery with them. And one of the girls looked at me and they were like, "Mom, we knew it wasn't about us. We didn't take it personally." She was basically saying, "We knew that you were blowing off steam and it wasn't to us. And it was good that I came and talked to them and recovered with them. But the
Mm.
fact that they watch mom get frustrated, but not to the point of destruction and hurting them in our relationship, they recognize if mom's out of sorts like that, it's not because of them, it's something else going on." And so
Right.
that was really like a beautiful moment for me. I didn't like going through it, but I was so grateful that the Lord brought me through that so that I could see, and help moms understand. You may lose it still. You may still get angry. There may be
Absolutely.
times that you are not happy about what you just said or did.
Right.
And life is messy and we are not perfect. And we're not going to achieve perfection down here. And so we have to learn how to work with anger in a healthier way, learn how to work through our triggers, learn why we've been triggered, and try to get to a place so on a daily basis, we aren't just going straight into destructive anger to hurt our children and our relationships. And then if we do end up in that place, how do we recover and rebuild and restore and move on without the guilt and just accept the grace that the Lord gives to us in those moments as well?
That's so good. So good. I'm just like soaking it up because I love the whole fact that you're letting the moms know, listen, you're not going to be perfect and you're not going to not get angry. Even the Bible says, be angry and sin not, right? Because
Yeah.
anger is an emotion. There's something that is angering you. It's scary because my wife is very passive, but when she has that moment, I'm like, uh-oh, here it comes. It's like a volcano. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Because I'm
Yeah.
so expressive that the anger to me now is like, people just think I'm just blowing off just a little bit steam, but not crazily. And one of my clients asked me, probably about a month ago, she was going through some stuff. And she said, Coach, I just want to be set free like you from all this stuff. And I said, let me tell you something. Being set free isn't about the problems not being there, isn't
Yeah.
about those triggers not coming. It's about understanding that you're going to make some mistakes. Okay. You fell short in that moment and you got a little bit hoodish. Okay. You're human. However, the freedom in that is saying, you know what, by God's grace and by the action that I take and
Mhm.
correct the problem, correct, people look at behavior, but we have to look at the root. If we
Yes.
can look at the root and understand that we can mow the lawn and we can mow the grass and we can do all of that. But if that root is still there, it's going to continue to stay there. And so
Yes.
that's what I love what you're saying to these mothers, saying, listen, it's not about being perfect. It's about understanding, okay, I'm in an angry moment, but how do I work through this moment and being able to express, voice my opinion, and all of those good things. And then for your daughters to recognize, Mom, we know that it wasn't about us. And
Yeah.
you even letting your daughter know, listen, some of this stuff might surface. And if it does, let's walk through it. And that's powerful because you're being vulnerable, you're being transparent, and you're letting her know, listen, generational curses are real, right?
Hmm.
It comes through the bloodline. It comes through what we see, because life is full of snapshots. We have
Yeah.
snapshots of what we think our picture should look like. And so I just love your whole concept of what you're doing, and especially going and helping the Christian mother, because there's this stigma that's put
Oh,
on
yeah.
us as believers, as we're just holy, we're just peaceful, like everything is good. And it's like, no, we're just as jacked up as everyone else. We just have
Uh-huh.
we have our Lord and Savior, right? And so this has just been so awesome. So if you want to add any more to that, would love it. And talk about your free package that you want to give to our listeners, and let's continue this conversation. It's good. It's good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, it's amazing how much we will allow ourselves to carry the guilt and shame because of anger or hurting our kids. And yes, we need to be convicted that we're hurting our kids through
Right.
destructive behaviors. And I really want to take a moment real quick. Let's talk about what's destructive and what's not. Because whenever I tell someone like, "What do you do?" and I tell them, they're like, "Well, doesn't every mom get angry? Does everybody need to talk to you?"
Yes, I love it.
I'm like, yes. Let's start at the basics here. What is anger? It is an emotion. And we have five basic emotions. We have anger, we have fear, disgust, um, I just lost some joy. There's one more. Oh, sadness. There we go. I'm like, okay, I know there's five.
Okay, awesome.
Um, and those ones there, they're all part of who we are. You could cut off your hand better than you could take out your emotion. You cannot not have an emotion,
Mm,
right? We cannot have empathy. There's definitely those people out there who don't have empathy and not have compassion, but we have emotions, okay? And
mhm.
so with those emotions, every single emotion has a physical response to it. When you're sad, typically you cry. When you're disgusted, you might be like, ugh, or fresh, kind of like roll your eyes. Fear, you have that fear response, right? Little sweaty palms or stomach ache or whatever. Joy, we're laughing and we're smiling. What about anger? How come anger gets so like kicked out of the park? Like you can't have any physical response to anger.
Right.
And I'm like, you can. And let's do this in a healthier way. Whereas the destructive way has been screaming, belittling, slamming doors, abusing with your hands, like I was spanking too hard or squeezing too hard, throwing things. And then there's some passive aggressive stuff where we just all of a sudden we're not going to talk and we leave the room, or we get snarky, or we make these little snide comments,
Right.
I remember I would leave the house. My husband would get home. I was so angry at everybody and everything in my life and the world. And I would just take off in my car and he would have no way to get a hold of me. So I'd leave my phone and all of those things. Right. And so there's all kinds of different destructive behaviors. And we know that they're destructive because we're using them to manipulate and control a situation. And when
Yes.
we're using the behavior to manipulate and control, then we're breaking down a relationship, we're hurting a relationship. And so that's where it all gets into that destructive category, right?
Right.
And then there's the anger that is just purely, it's just anger. We're feeling frustrated, right? We might raise our voice, we might get stern.
Right.
A lot of times too, moms will misconstrue, and dads, or anyone, we can look at us getting angry and think we're doing a bad thing when it's coming from fear. So like your kid running out in the street and you're like screaming, no, get back here. That's not you being destructive. That is you warning your child to not get hit by a car. Right. And so, but
Absolutely.
in fear can come fear and disgust and sadness. All three of those can actually be bypassed and go straight to anger. Sadness is one that a lot of times, because sadness is such a vulnerable state. People don't like people to see sadness, and people don't know how to really deal with sadness. And so anger is a safer place to be. It's a more protective place. And that's really what's really going on, is that we are trying to protect ourselves. And that's why we control and manipulate a situation, right?
Right.
Moms get into this protective state because they're tired and they're over it, and they get to this place. I have told you 15 times to do something and you are still not listening to me, and you respond when I get really angry, right?
Right.
And it feels productive. It feels productive to yell at our kids. And so we start creating this response, this coping mechanism, and we don't like it. We know it's not how the Lord wants us to respond to our kids, but it's working. And again, that's because it feels productive. So we have to really step back and go, how can I be productive through this in a healthier way? And that's where I teach my moms sit and pray. We stop, that's the S. We separate, get a moment, right? Some people would call it timeout. I like to call it calm down time, because a lot of times timeout has become a consequence, right?
Right.
And so we just want to stop and reset. And the I is inhale. So we want to take those deep breaths and relax our whole flesh, relax the flesh system.
Right.
And then T is tuning in. Okay, I'm upset right now. It's okay that I'm upset. Anger is okay. And that's something, especially with Christians that I deal with, it feels like a sin to be angry. And I'm trying to help moms understand, you can't not help getting angry. That's just part of who you are. It's how you respond is where we start the sin cycle, right?
Wow.
So when you're feeling frustrated, you're not sinning. When you're feeling angry, you're not sinning. But how are you responding? So if you stop and inhale and tune in, it's okay that I'm angry. Validate yourself. It's okay that I'm angry right now. Anyone would be angry if if their children were fighting, right?
Right.
Or you have to
Absolutely.
tell someone 15 times to do something, or you're getting talked back to, whatever it is. It's okay that you're
Wow.
angry. And then praying and asking the Lord, okay, Lord, I'm frustrated. I need to really think about what's going on in the situation. Are we hungry? Are we tired? Are we overstimulated? Do we just need to take a break from this and talk this through later? I'm thinking teenagers right now, because that's where I'm at.
Right. Right.
Or marriages too. Husband and wives, same thing. Let's let's stop and separate and come back to it. But praying and asking the Lord for guidance, for strength. You can turn that P into a praise. When we start praising the Lord, we're focusing on him. I just saw a saying today that was so cool. It was on David Guzik's site, Enduring Word, and it says, allow God to become bigger and your misery to become smaller. And he was talking about where Jeremiah was when he was, it's in Jeremiah 20, specifically between 11 and 13, the verses, but he's talking about Jeremiah is just like, why was I even born? This is so hard, right?
Right.
And yet he's also praising the Lord, like, because that's where we got to go. When we make that shift and praise the Lord, we focus on him and not our trials, and he's able to help us in those moments. And this all sounds great and it sounds awesome. And it's like, yes, I'm going to do that the next time I get angry, but you might not. This is something that you have to really start to work on and become more and more aware of it. That's why I have the trigger tracker for your audience to go download for free. Awesome. And it's just Natalie Hixson / set free life. Sorry.
Awesome.
So, and when we stop and kind of break down our triggering moments, we start to see, we kind of get a bird's eye view, and we start to process and bring awareness to, why am I getting triggered like this at bedtime every night? You know, right. What can I do to work through this? How do I want this to look next time? And you can do those sit moments. You can take those moments and do presets where, if you know you're going to be triggered, if bedtime is a triggering moment, or getting out of the house with kids is a triggering moment, you can do that preset before you say it's time to go or it's time for bed. Just take a moment for yourself and really tune into the Lord and just ask him for strength and help you work through these things.
That is so awesome. Like, this is so good. I could probably guarantee that when COVID hit, you probably got a whole lot more response, or maybe some more clients or programs. I don't know how you do your coaching, but I'm sure that the anger vamped up, right? Because of COVID.
Oh yeah, it's very stressful. I mean, moms having to have completely shift their whole, what they think is routine, or what their routine should be, and having kids home. And we are a homeschool family. We now have one kiddo in school, but it is different. There is absolutely a difference. Every mom who had to bring their kid home to do school at home, that is not what homeschool looks like. And my heart went out to every single mom and dad who had to deal with that, right, and who might still be dealing with that. So yeah, it was absolutely a triggering situation. And there's definitely, it's those type of things, like what I'm talking about, those overwhelming, uncontrollable, out of life moments that you can't do anything about, that can really bring a lot of things to the surface, right? Gotcha. I mean, we're parents, just having children brings a lot of stuff to the surface, right?
Yes, emotions, everything.
Oh, man, yeah. Yes. But then for those who don't have kids, you know, there's other things in their life that will bring things to the surface. Because there's one lie that moms, and probably dads can do this too, believe, and that is, if I didn't have these kids, or if I didn't live in this family, they'd be better off without me, and I'd be better off without them. It's like, no, actually, if you didn't have that family, there'd be something else in your life that'd be triggering you. So God's going to grow you either way.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. I love it. And you know what else I love is because my website is setfreelife.net. And so when I saw this earlier, nataliehixson.com/setfreelife, I'm like, yes, another freedom coach. But yes, please go down to this link, and it'll be down in the show notes, nataliehixson.com. That's Hixson, HIXSON.com/setfreelife. So you can get that download. Is it like a PDF form, or is it a video, or?
It's a PDF, yeah.
Okay, awesome. And I know that this is going to help. So one last question, because this is something that I have helped others through as well, because that was my biggest thing was anger. And I mean, we can go on and on with this topic because there's so many spinally roots that come off of the root of anger. But you were talking about control. So do you think, just from your experience and what you've learned, that when people are trying to control, it's because of they're being out of control? Is that what you've known or sensed, or where does the whole control aspect come, do you think, from a
Yeah,
person?
I think it really comes from that fear of something's not right and you have to protect yourself, right? Your insecurities. It really comes down, what I've noticed in my coaching and just my own experience personally,
Right.
is when you don't have the confidence in who you are in Christ
Mm.
and you constantly believe this, I'm not good enough, then you're constantly having to protect yourself. And parents dealing with children, it's as much as we would like to not think this is happening, but it's that we're looking at our kids when they're being defiant, when they're not listening, when they're, just being their developmental stages. We
Right.
take it personally. We
Wow.
take it real personally that they wouldn't listen to us, or that they would say something like, I hate you, mom, or I hate you, dad, and so it's in that moment where if there's things that have not been resolved and we haven't worked through real forgiveness and resentment, right? And we haven't learned how to really find that security and confidence within ourselves, within who Christ has made us to be, we really do get into this cycle of having to protect ourselves even from our children. And that fear of, if they don't listen to me, then something's not right, and it's not okay, and it's not going to go the way I expect it to. And we don't really allow for the Lord to go, hey, this isn't all about you. This is about, God is multifaceted. This is about your
Mhm.
children learning. This is about you growing. This is about me making you a stronger person for my glory. And so I don't know if that really answers the question, but that's when I think about, why are we fighting back? Why are we retaliating? Why are we responding in a destructive way when we're struggling with destructive anger?
Right.
It's really about what's going on inside of us. And I also teach my clients, when somebody's treating you poorly, it's not about you, it's about them.
Hmm.
It's same thing with your kids. If your kids are acting out towards you, it's not because of you, it's because of what's going on inside of them. And you make it about you when you respond poorly, or if you initiate by responding or hurting someone in the beginning. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. That's exactly what I wanted you to touch on, because there's so many people that can't understand why the the control in their life is happening. And so for me, it was like, okay, now I'm finally talking to somebody who is talking my jam, because I've told people, because you're insecure, that
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like you're out of control, and you're trying to take control of everything by building
Yeah.
these walls, building this thing, this pride issue, these all of these different facets, like you said. And until we understand who we are, that's when everything changes. And there's
Yeah.
this phrase that I learned 17 years ago. Um, and I hold on to it forever, because I had to go through this season of losing things. I lost a ministry, I lost a business, I lost just a ton. And that's when I understood what that meant. So I learned this phrase 17 years ago. I didn't realize what it meant until 2015. This was 7 years ago. You are what, if you are what you have and you lose it, then who are you?
Mm.
So we're constantly, as people, you know, about status sometimes.
Oh,
Got to have the
yes.
house, got to have the right car, got to have this, got to be
Yes.
certified, got to have that,
Totally been there.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
and all of it's good, but when it becomes your identity and you lose it,
Mm-hmm.
then it's like, well, who the heck am I?
Yeah.
Like, what am I doing? And so we begin to create these walls. We begin to create this fortress that's our own. But what does the Bible say? God is our fortress. He is our
Yes.
refuge. He is our rock. But when we replace him with us and with things, and when we lose those things, then who am I? Because that's what people come to us for. And so that's why I was asking you this question, because I've had these conversations, and a lot of people just don't get it. And I'm like, listen, until you understand your insecurity is driving you to be out of control, because you can't control what you don't have a hold of. Now
Yep.
you're trying to control a situation because, like you said, it's a protective mechanism. You were trying to protect what's yours. And so it's just, man, this conversation is so, so awesome. I would love to have you back next year, because I know that my listeners are going to want to hear more. So let us know where we can find you, your websites, your social media, whatever you want to share with the public. And then let us know once again where we can get that download.
Awesome. Yes. So I'm at nataliehixson.com, and that's HIXSON.
Right.
Tricky little S in there. And the freebie that I'm sending out to you, that trigger tracker, is same website, nataliehixson.com. Set free life is after the slash. And then I'm not on social media anymore, but you can just, find me over there. I've got a blog. You can jump on the email list when you download the trigger tracker, and that's where I hang out.
Perfect. 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 Natalie, once again, thank you so much for coming on Coach's Corner. This has been just totally, totally awesome. And remember, guys, you can reach out to me at setfreelife.net. You can connect with me on all my social media platforms, or you can email me at recoverycoach@setfreelife.net. And all these links will be down below, on whether it's on YouTube or on audio podcasts. So with that being said, we love you. God bless you. And we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.